You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Derby. In episode 18 of the pod, with Professor Paul Rouse, we spoke about the importance of Trinity College Dublin in the development of organised sport in Ireland from the 1850s onwards. Sports such as athletics, rugby football, cricket, rowing, association football, golf, and even hurling were enjoyed by students and staff alike. Gavin Caldwell joins us today to reflect on the history of golf at Trinity College Dublin. The Dublin University was established by royal decree in 1592, making it the oldest university in Ireland and one of the 7 ancient universities of Great Britain and Ireland. From a golfing perspective, the University Golf Club was founded in 1894, with the Dublin University Golf Society following later in 1909. Names such as Anthony Trail, Cecil Barcroft, Anthony Babington, Lionel Munn, Ian Bamford and Arthur Pearce are indelibly linked to Trinity Golf. These names echo down through the history of Irish golf, through elite competition, administration, course design, to name but a few categories. Over the course of the next hour or so, we hope to learn a little more about Trinity's positive influence on the golfing landscape of Ireland. I can think of no better guide to this exposition than Gavin Caldwell, who has lived a life in golf and has been associated with golf at Trinity for over 60 years. Many thanks for tuning in. We do hope you enjoy our chat. Gavin Caldwell, you're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much, Shane. Yeah.
Listen, many thanks for joining me today at Portmarnock Golf Club to explore the fascinating story of golf at Trinity College Dublin. Before we jump into the main event, you might provide us with a wee introduction to yourself and how your early adventures in golf commenced.
Okay, well, it's a quick resume. I'm a Derry man originally, so I'm some people would have called it Londonderry where I came from, but that was my home. And in fact, my parents were more tennis players than golfers, but they took up golf in their 40s, and I got the chance to follow them around, caddy for them, and play at Northwest Golf Club in Lisfannon, which will recur as we go through some of these details about Trinity Golf. But the reason I established myself down here in this area is that I went to prep school first of all in Castle Park, and then to St. Columba's College. And the natural step from there was to go to Trinity College Dublin in the 60s, where I did a business studies degree in between 1965 and 69. And by that time, golf was firmly embedded in my DNA, and I fortunate enough to get one of the 12 places that Trinity had here at Portmarnock Golf Club. So I joined here in Portmarnock in 1965. So even though I went away for 5 years to the UK, on returning in 1974, I rejoined Portmarnock Golf Club as an ordinary member, and I recognised the opportunity of playing golf with the Dublin University Golfing Society, which by then was well established, albeit a little bit dormant at that time.
I've been involved with Trinity College Dublin for nigh on 60 years. I'm just wondering what it's meant to you over that period of time and what opportunities and experiences from a golfing perspective it's afforded you.
Yeah, well, I think, as I say, when we were students, somehow we managed to get out to Portmarnock 3 or 4 days a week. So that's where golf became probably more ingrained in us than maybe our academic interest in the world of business. But so from that point of view, golf and Trinity have been inexorably linked in my life. And as I say, to come back to Dublin in 1974, where it was effectively making a new life, because my original home, as I said, was in Northern Ireland. Having the opportunity to play at Portmarnock, be asked to do committee work, and at the same time work with those who were then running the Dugs. And a good friend of mine, Peter Bunbury, had taken on the honorary secretaryship of DUGS in the 70s. So he ensured that those of us who were enthusiastic would join him in a new round of matches, which he established in the 70s. And then once having started a few matches which we'd come on to with the Scottish Universities Golfing Society in 1977, we really took off from there and realised that society golf was a terrific addition to our golfing lives.
Well, the inspiration for today's podcast can be traced back to a book that I was gifted by a mutual friend of ours a number of years ago. The book is, of course, entitled From College Courses to Lasting Links. In fact, it's a book that you co-wrote with your good friend Michael Halliday. What prompted the two of you to take on this project?
Oh, straightforward. The centenary of Dublin University Golfing Society was coming up in 2009, and we recognised that really we should put it on the record what had been happening in golf, both at undergraduate level and graduate level in the previous 100 years. Actually, we had a little competition for the title of the book, and a great Doug, and also past captain of Portmarnock, Charlie McCaw, came up with this terrific title, say, From College Courses to Lasting Links, and it was easily the winner of our competition.
Well, it's a great read, and we're going to learn a bit more about it today and the whole story about golf at Trinity. But maybe as a starting point, you might set the scene for us regarding sport, not only in Trinity, but beyond, in a golfing context and other sports in Ireland from maybe 1850s onwards.
Well, first of all, in the golfing context, the first golf was played here was in the 1850s in the Curragh, where the British Army were. But clubs really only became established or started to establish in the 1880s. And the first club was Royal Belfast, or Belfast. A lot of these obviously got the Royal Charter subsequently. But golf was played typically where the army were. So it was played at Belfast, Kinsale, the Curragh, and Dublin, and then subsequently Portrush and Newcastle, County Down. And in fact, such was the growth of golf in the 1880s that the Golfing Union of Ireland was established in 1891, and it actually was the first golfing union of the four home countries. So we really did have a boom time in the 1880s in the sport. So Dublin University Golf Club was established in 1894. Now, sport was already well established in Trinity by then. The cricket club was established in 1835. Rowing, actually there was a rowing club in the 1830s, but the main Dublin University Boat Club was established in 1847, and the Dublin University Football Club, rugby, was established in 1854. So we were relatively late in sporting terms in the college, but of course golf had really only taken off, as I said, in the 1880s. But the catalyst for establishing the undergraduates were a couple of very prominent people. Cecil Barcroft is one of the best known exponents of the game back in the end of the 19th century. He was in college in he was the first honorary secretary of the undergraduates in 1894. He went on to become one of the leading pioneers of both Trinity Golf and golf in general until his untimely death when he was 53. He was a staunch Royal Dublin member. He was captain of Royal Dublin in 1901. He got very interested in golf architecture. He became very friendly with Harry Cole, who was one of the great architects at the time. And he did so much to establish golf in Trinity and also establish a link with Royal Dublin, where basically it became the home of Trinity Golf from the beginning for many years to come, which we'll touch on. The other interesting personality at the time was, he was on the staff at the time, Professor Anthony Trail. The Trails were a prominent County Antrim family, and Tony, as he was called, went to Trinity as a student in 1855, and he was renowned as an all-round sportsman in just about everything. And he insisted on being selected for the college teams long after his graduation. And he actually only started playing golf in 1890, by which time he was 52. And he actually played for Ulster in the first Interpro against Leinster in his 50s, and he was the inaugural president of Dublin University Golf Club. So those two individuals were really the driving force of the undergraduate golf. But as it turned out, in the next 10 years or so, some really prominent players went to the university, and that's where golf became very much a focal point in university sport.
I understand when those early club members weren't playing golf around the front square at Trinity. As you said, they'd often be found enjoying the conviviality of the links at Dollymount, which was their early home course. In preparation for our chat today, I was daydreaming about those early golfing pioneers at Dollymount and came to the realisation that they generally fell into one or two of the following buckets: Scotsman, military, the bar, current or former students at Trinity College Dublin. You might speak about the importance of the Royal Dublin course at Dollymount to the formative years of golf at Trinity, and indeed perhaps the role that these students and graduates played in the growth of golf at Royal Dublin.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, golf was played where the army were, and the army, say, first played at the Curragh, and then they were the military, although there were some Scots as well, but they established golf originally in Phoenix Park. So the first Dublin Golf Club was in Phoenix Park, and the same military personnel, who were by definition typically English or Scots, found the land at Dollymount and established the course there. And they actually, the story of Dollymount, which you well know, is that it was then turned over to the army during World War One and became a military training ground. So basically, golf ceased. But in addition to that, whether it's coincidence or not, but a lot of these golfers, these undergraduates at Trinity who were golfers, were studying law. And actually, if you look at their background, a lot of them were from the north of Ireland. I mean, by that stage already, the Trinity College was regarded as technically out of bound to the local Catholic community. So even way back 100 or more years ago, Trinity College Dublin was populated by people typically from the north of Ireland. And a lot of them were studying the law. And the Bar Golfing Society itself was established in Great Britain in 1903, and so there was a Bar Golfing Society branch here in Ireland, and that actually became an issue for the Dugs, which I'll touch on.
You know, I was able to tell you something perhaps that you weren't aware of earlier on today, as proof of the strong connection between Dublin University Golf Club and Royal Dublin. The Trinity College Cup was played from the late 1890s. It was a cup given to the golf club by the Dublin University Golf Club and played under scratch match play format, competed for annually, as I said, between late 1890s until 1912, where the Honourable Edward Gibson won it for the third time, meaning that it became his property, as happened back in the day. Unfortunately, the particular competition fizzled out post-1912 in the absence of any additional availability of a trophy. But I believe the period 1900 to 1914 saw significant numbers of Dublin University Golf Club members representing Ireland in those early international matches.
Yeah, I mean, you refer to the undergraduates playing in Royal Dublin. I mean, it was interesting. The Golfing Union of Ireland established a senior cup in 1900, and Dublin University Golf Club were the first winners of the senior cup. And most of the best golfers in Royal Dublin were at Trinity, and they played for the undergraduates, which is, by the way, something I firmly support, and I would still hope that the undergraduate teams can compete in the Senior Cup and similar competitions
I believe
today.
that win may well have raised some heckles amongst the blowhards in the Irish golfing community.
Yes, it did. I mean, those that were playing at established clubs, and Portmarnock was established by then, and Royal Dublin and others, said that these students were imposters and they really weren't true club members. They didn't have a golf club. And this is where the future legal skills of Sir Anthony Babington, as one example, who came out with a very strong riposte in public to these people. Anyway, I think it's soon drifted away.
Apropos those early international matches, I think it's probably useful to take a look at two or three of those characters who are obviously worthy of a mention. From a golfing perspective in Trinity context, I think you could certainly make a very cogent argument that one Lionel Munn may well be one of the best golfers to pass through Trinity. So you might bring us through Lionel's back catalogue of golfing endeavours.
Well, with all due respect to some of those who are of my generation and younger, who have been very prominent golfers out of Trinity, I think we can say Lionel Munn was the best golfer to come out of Trinity. He won 7 championships between 1908 and 1914. And there weren't that many championships in those days, but he won 4 Irish Close Championships and 3 Irish Open Championships. His 4 Irish Close Championships, which were 36-hole finals, his margin of victory in the 4 of them was 10-9, 7-6, 6-5, and 10-8. So I think without doubt, Munn was out on his own as the best golfer of the time. Interesting, he's also from Derry. He also learned to play at Northwest. He also went to St. Columba's, and then he went to Trinity. So all the things that link into my past, but I'm afraid that's where the comparison ends. He then went to the war, and the sad thing, and one of my great disappointments, is that my grandfather would have known him, because my grandfather was captain of Northwest. But sadly, I didn't have him to speak to, and when we were doing this book, and I wasn't able to get enough information about the history of the Munn family. He went to then go and live in England after the war, lived down in Kent and played golf at Deal and Sandwich. But actually, he got to the final of the Amateur Championship when he was 52, which was played at Royal St. George's. So he was clearly a long-lasting golfer, and actually came back to live out his life. We know very little about his family life or whether he had any children, and he came out to live out his life in Killarney with Dr. Billy O'Sullivan, who of course was a very well-known Irish golfer. And we play to this day, Portmarnock and Dublin University Golf Society have a match played for the Munn putter, which was presented to us by the O'Sullivan family.
I did come across something online yesterday. Now, one has to be wary sometimes of what one finds online, but this particular source, and I'm wondering, is there any truth to this, that Mr. Munn could well have been a Walker Cup player in 1934, but unfortunately he had to withdraw from the team just before the match, apparently due to a cold.
Do have the understanding that he was selected, and we do understand that he did withdraw, and that's about as much information as we're able to find out. But he was enigmatic, I think it's fair to say, and it is interesting that we weren't able to find out that much about him after he went to live in England.
Another golfer worth taking a look at is Anthony Brutus Babington, later Sir Anthony Brutus Babington, a great friend, I believe, of Lionel Munn's. 10 years his senior. You might tell us a little bit about Sir Anthony.
Do know more about the Babington family than the Munn family. They were also a Derry family, and I would have known some of his descendants. And he also learnt his golf in Northwest Golf Club, where he was captain. And as you say, born in 1877, a very, very prominent Trinity golfer and a very prominent barrister. So he practiced here up to the time of partition, and because he was on the Northwest Circuit at the time of partition, his job really drew him into Northern Ireland. So he then moved up to Northern Ireland, and that's where he resided. He became a member of Parliament, but all the time that he was enjoying a very significant legal career, golf was quite clearly top of his agenda. So Portrush became his absolute love. He also, like Cecil Barcroft, befriended Harry Colt. He worked with Harry Colt on the reconstruction of Royal Dublin after the World War One, and when he went to live in the north, he and Harry Colt brought the current Royal Portrush Golf Club very much to light. In fact, both courses have holes called Colt and Babington. So he was just through and through in love with the game of golf.
Did you get to know him?
No, I met him, but by definition, he died in 1972, and I was a student member of Portrush at that time, so I would have seen him in the club, but I never had the chance to really talk to him or meet him. But I did know his children and grandchildren, who were his grandchildren, obviously contemporaries of mine.
He very much seemed to be a doer, as opposed to maybe some of his contemporaries on the committee who maybe were talkers. There's an interesting story about a caddy shack or a caddy building or facilities for caddies. You might just quickly tell us that story?
Yeah, well, he was known as the owner in Portrush. I mean, he didn't believe in committees, really.
Maybe he has a point.
And he just took it on himself to build the caddy shack. And it was only some year later, some meeting or some committee, somebody referred to the building, and he had just taken on himself to do it without any consultation. Sometimes the way some golf clubs are well run.
Benevolent dictatorship. Yeah. Nothing like it. The last golfer that's probably, I actually beg your pardon, I'm doing him a disservice, all-round sportsman, Cecil Park, I believe, has a litany of sports he excelled in.
Yeah, no discussion about Trinity sport should be allowed to leave out James Cecil Park, as he's called. He was from Clones. He was born in 1881. And actually, golf wasn't his main sport. I mean, he won the Irish Tennis Championship 15 times. We're talking today, the day after the Australian Open Tennis Championship. So Cecil Park was the Australian Open Tennis Champion in 1912. And interesting, he was in Australia playing for what was then the British Davis Cup team, who the week before the Australian Championship had won the Davis Cup against Australia, which was a major achievement in those days. And in addition to his tennis expertise, he was capped 20 times for rugby. So he was truly one of the great all-round sportsmen, and one of the founding members of the Dublin University Golfing Society. So we really shouldn't pass over Trinity sport without talking about him.
Well, heretofore we've been focused on the Dublin University Golf Club, and I believe in 1909 the Dublin University Golf Society was formed. What were the main drivers behind the Dublin University Golf Society being set up?
Two things I'd say. First of all, the Oxford and Cambridge golf clubs got together and formed what they called the Society. Now they're allowed to call it that because there weren't any others, but they established that in 1898, and it's called the Society to the present day. And they came over on tour in 1906 and 1908, and in fact, one of the leading exponents of those tours was a man called Pickman, who was one of the founder members of Portmarnock. And And Pickman invited Oxford and Cambridge on tour, recognising they were a very prominent new society. So when they were here in 1906 and 1908, obviously a number of Trinity graduates and undergraduates played against them, and they said clearly we should follow them in having our own society. And similarly, the Scottish University's Golfing Society established in 1906. So it was already happening in England and Scotland that the leading universities were establishing their own society of graduates and alumni. So that must have been a leading point. And a lot of the Trinity golfers were graduates, as were lawyers, as we pointed out, and the Bar Golfing Society had been established in Britain in 1903. So another reason, actually, which still amuses me, is that they couldn't stop Anthony Trail playing for the undergraduates. Even though he was in his 50s and 60s at this stage. So he kept on wanting to grab the limelight, and they reckon one of the only ways they could really get him to stop wanting to play in the undergraduate matches was to establish a society for alumni.
But I believe that wasn't just the golf that he wanted to participate in. He wanted to participate in the cricket matches and in the rowing meets as well.
He did, and in particularly in rowing, they did their best to get him to stand down from the rowing 8, but he insisted on a row-off against an undergraduate who, the poor guy, was so...
And he beat him as well.
He did. Well, the poor undergrad was so terrified that he just obviously collapsed and must have caught a few crabs or something like that, and he duly had to be selected. So I'd say that was a very good reason why you had an alumni society, to get him away from the undergrads.
Prior to the Great War, the Dugs did play its first match at Dollymount against Cambridge in 1910, but the early years of the society appeared to have been a bit light from a fixtures perspective. I'm just wondering what you would attribute that dearth of early fixtures to.
Yeah, I think the bar, the fact that so many were barristers, they all joined the Bar Golf Society. It had got itself established, and there are records of matches involving the Bar Golf Society, which were heavily populated by Trinity alumni. So I think it was just really hard to get a new society off the ground, and it wasn't much of a time lapse between 1909 and 1914, and the war just really brought all that to an end.
Taking a look at that period from the outbreak of the Great War, Ireland's history is pockmarked in turn with World War I, the 1916 Easter Rising, the War of Independence, the Civil War and Partition. Just wondering what effect you think this litany of events had, not only in golf and Trinity, but golf and Ireland in general.
Yeah, I mean, it was by definition a really, really difficult decade, and everybody had to find their way back into a normal society after 1918, and then this country had its own, as you say, had its own interruptions after that. Interestingly, Trinity sport did recover pretty quickly in 1919, and what was then established and now known as DUCAC, the Dublin University Central Athletic Club, made a major effort to revive sport in Trinity, and it's clear that in the early 20s, at the time of the War of Independence and the Civil War, golf as undergraduates was recovering quite strongly, and I think there's again a bit like the 1990s, or 1890s, sorry. Here we are in the early 1920s, where we got some very prominent undergraduates, including people like Harry Thrift, who was also captain of the Irish rugby team, and Dennis Pringle, who we will talk about at length, because Dennis was honorary secretary of the undergraduates in 1924 and 2025, and it was very much his initiative to bring the DUGC, the undergraduates, on tour to Scotland 2 years in a row. That was pretty adventures of them, I would have thought, in the early 20s, given all had just gone before. So when it came to that point of, although the Dugs obviously didn't revive as a society after the war, but that university sport definitely did, which was a great stepping stone for the Dugs.
Well, as you said there, I think the names Harry Thrift, Louis Werner, and most importantly, Dennis Pringle created the impetus and indeed, in Dennis's case, the administrative foundations that allowed the Dublin University Golf Society to rekindle itself and then to flourish over the next 50 years and beyond. What can you tell us about Harry, Louis, and most importantly, Mr. Pringle?
Well, they put a notice in the Irish Times in early 1926, so exactly 100 years ago, as we speak, to advise alumni that they were going to meet in college to revive the Dublin University Golf Society. And Harry Thrift, seemed like only 3 of them attended, but Harry Thrift was appointed as president, selected as president, Dennis Pringle as honorary secretary, and was actually third member president, Louis Werner. I mean, Louis was a fascinating character, and to this day, his son, I should have asked Nigel what age his dad was when he was born, but Nigel is still an active member of Portmarnock today, and only played with them a few weeks ago. So Louis Werner was very much, and Louis was an international as well, and Louis became a very prominent member of that group of 3 who really got the Dugs up and running from 1926. Another important link here, because Harry Thrift established a really strong friendship with Bernard Darwin. Now, Bernard Darwin was by then the doyen of golf in Great Britain. He was the leading light of the society. He actually went to the first Walker Cup to be a journalist, and one of the members of the team took ill, and he ended up playing and winning his match in the first Walker Cup match. So Bernard Darwin is everybody knows about Bernard's background, but Harry Thrift became a great pal of his, and that all led to the Oxford and Cambridge Society starting their tours over here, and they toured over here in 1930, where they actually didn't play the Dugs. They played Portmarnock and Royal Dublin, but they came back in 1931, and we had our first match against the Society in 1931.
Maybe if we linger on Dennis Pringle for a moment, who I believe was honorary secretary of the Dugs for 46 years. That's some commitment, and I suspect the current and former members of the Dugs owe such a debt of gratitude to that commitment.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't have compiled this book without Dennis Pringle. He kept meticulous records of Dugs events, AGMs, captain's prizes, president's prizes, matches. It became, the love of his life. I talked about Anthony Babington earlier and the time he put into Portrush, but Anthony Babington continued to be a very prominent member of the Dugs all through this time that Dennis was honorary secretary. Yeah, I mean, the record book is still there. Our current team who run the Dugs retain it carefully, and as I say, all the records were there, photographs were there, press cuttings. He kept them all, and he was an extraordinary man of energy. And of course, he was all the time a very prominent barrister and then judge. And he was in his 70s. He eventually persuaded him to be president of the Dugs. He kept on saying, "No, I don't want to be president," but he eventually became president in 1972 on his 70th birthday. But also in 1972, he was appointed president of the newly created Special Criminal Court. So that gives you a sense of the man he was. And in fact, during the 70s, and this is when a lot of us still remember him very well, he presided over some pretty significant trials. It had a kidnapping, the Rose Dugdale case, and the murder of Garda Michael Reynolds. So he was doing all that in his 70s in a very tense time in this country, and yet he continued to be president of the Dugs and active.
And play golf with his protection unit.
Yeah, and we would have matches, particularly at Carrickmines, where the Dugs match against Carrickmines was obviously established by him, and you never really knew who was hiding in the bushes when you were playing with him. I had the same experience playing with Lord Larry, who, of course, Dennis would have known well as well. Lord Larry was actually a society man. He was at Cambridge, but he was another of those prominent barristers. There's a great photograph in our book of Robbie Lowry, Anthony Babington, and Teddy Jones. Teddy Jones was another influential Dug who went back, was from Northern Ireland, and who also became Attorney General. But it's to me one of the best photographs in our book of Babington, Lowry, and Jones.
I was just interested, as the society rekindled its operation from 1926, Portmarnock Golf Club appears to come more to the fore as the main match host and home to the Dublin University Golf Society. I'm just wondering, what factors do you think were at play in this gradual migration away from Dollymount towards the links of Portmarnock?
I think that comes a bit later, if I may say. I mean, I think it comes back in the 1960s. I would say that Royal Dublin, I'd say Royal Dublin, and then Carrickmines, the Grange, they were much more the homes of Trinity golfers through the 30s, 40s, and 50s. The Portmarnock, I played in the last colours match to be played at Royal Dublin in 1966. In fact, it's a time to mention the colours match because UCD obviously was starting to flourish as a golf club in the 20s and 30s, and the first colours match was played in 1935 between Trinity and UCD. So we're into our 10th decade now of colours matches, and the past captain of Royal Dublin and PJ Murphy presented the trophy for the colours match, which is still the Murphy Cup to this day, even though we are on at least a second edition, because it's never that easy to keep finding the Murphy Cup at the end of the colours match every day.
Got waylaid.
You got waylaid once or twice. Yeah.
I believe, just as a complete aside, I believe the writer Sam Beckett was a Dublin University Golf Club member.
Yeah, Sam Beckett was in Trinity in the 20s. He lowest handicap was, I think, 6. Cricket was his main love, but he did play for the Dugs. He had an uncle who was a very prominent Dug all through the 30s and 40s. But before he left to go to live in France, he was actively seen golfing, particularly at Carrickmines. We should really go back to just after Dennis and others had established the Dugs, and said the society tour here in 31 was important. It sort of kick-started the society in saying such matches are what we should be doing, and so Dennis arranged tours to Northern Ireland. And of course, Teddy Jones was there, Sir Anthony Babington was there. There was really strong links. Lionel Munn was still alive, although he was living in the UK, of course, but he still, I think, he did come over for one of those matches at Northwest. So they had some very successful tours in 36, 37, and 38, and I think 39. But then, of course, yet again, society was totally interrupted by World War II, and those tours came to an end.
And I believe World War II got in the way of a possible World Cup selection.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. James Mann is another very prominent golfer who should be mentioned, not least because I've referred to the ban of the Catholic Church, and so it's always interesting to see Dr. James, who was a local man from around Sutton, very prominent Portmarnock member, past captain, past trustee. Won the Irish Close Championship and played for Ireland 3 different years. But he was certainly at his peak around about 1938-39, time of James Bruin. But there was no Walker Cup, obviously, between 39 and 45. So he may well have made it. I knew his son, Dr. James Jr., was actually captain of UCD the year I was captain of DUGC. I always enjoyed the little limerick, of course, because the UCD students, they didn't let us away with everything, but there was one well-known lecturer in UCD who ingrained in his students the limerick, "You can murder or shoot, pillage or loot, rape or have carnal knowledge, but however depraved, your soul will be saved if you don't go to Trinity College." I don't know how Dr. James was able to manage his time with his UCD counterparts, but anyway, he was a very prominent DUGC golfer.
Hostilities were recommenced post-World War II with the society travelling to play the Dugs in consort, in fact, with Portmarnock's hosting of the Amateur Championship in 1949.
Yeah, so yet again, things have gone into abeyance, and the society was extremely helpful to us, I would say, in agreeing to come on tour. And first of all, it was a very significant event for the Amateur Championship to be hosted in Portmarnock, only 4 years after the war, where this country played a neutral role, and yet the RNA supported the idea of playing the Amateur Championship here, which I think Portmarnock is forever grateful for. And some of the leading lights of golf in those days, there was,
Francis Ouimet, Raymond Oppenheimer, Leonard Crawley, Gerald Micklem.
And Francis Ouimet, of course, everybody remembers from the 1913 US Open.
Himself and Eddie Lowry.
Indeed. And we just have some terrific memorabilia again, thanks to Dennis Pringle. We got the and Bernard Dowens, I should have said, was president of the society then. We got some great photographs of that match in 1949 of our menu of the dinner in the dining hall in Trinity, they were just special times.
You mentioned earlier on about the conveyor belt of quality golf talent being attracted to Trinity and passing through the gates on a cyclical basis almost. One particular golfer that I'd like you to introduce the listeners to is Ian Bamford.
Yeah, and again, a rejuvenation of the society was very much influenced by some prominent undergraduates, and Ian Bamford was one of those. I mean, Ian's still alive today, in good health, albeit into his 90s. He came to Trinity in 1951 from Northern Ireland, and he was capped when he was an undergraduate, capped actually 3 years in a row, 1954 to 56. And he was the first Trinity winner of the Boyd Quake. The Boyd Quake is an event which those of us who played in it, it means a lot to us. It means a lot to a lot of the people. It was established by family and friends of two Boyd brothers who were both killed in the Second World War, and this event was played in 1946 for the first time, and Trinity were invited to be one of only 10 universities to play in it and remember these Boyd brothers. And the Boyd Quake is now played every year in St Andrews, and it's something that we all aspired to play in, and I was fortunate enough to play in it once. But Ian Bamford won it. He won it twice, He won it in 1953 and 1956. And he went on to be very, very supportive of the Dugs, still is. We still speak to him regularly. And he was president in our centenary year.
One last golfer I'd like to get you to focus on. Somebody else who I believe is of your acquaintance or known to you is Tipperary's finest, Arthur Pearce.
Yeah, well, Arthur, he's a bit younger than me, so we went in college together, but obviously I got to know him well during the 70s and 80s when he was, first of all, played for us for the Dugs, and I'll touch on that a little bit when we get to some of our current matches, but he was already very prominent in championships, Irish International, and ultimately the Walker Cup in 1983. So our first known full-time Walker Cup player. Actually, there's one that's a tragedy. I say it's a tragedy, but he did get beaten in the semi-final of the Amateur Championship at Porthcawl a couple of years beforehand. And there's a bit of colour around the person who beat him, and there were apparently some questions about the round in which he beat Arthur. And this chap, Davis is his name, I forget his Christian name, but he was fortunate. He played some American in the 36-hole final at Porthcawl the next day in truly dreadful weather, and the American hadn't a clue how to cope with the conditions, and this particular Welshman won the Amateur Championship, which a lot of us still feel should have been Arthur's. But
you might just introduce us to Robert Pollan. I believe you were in university with Robert.
Yeah, Robert and I went to Trinity the same time, exactly the same time. So
you were part-time, or you were sometime caddy, I believe.
Well, first of all, the first 2 years, I ended up being his foursomes partner, which was a bit intimidating because he wasn't the easiest guy sometimes, but we did get on particularly well. But he still claims that I was the reason why he became such a good iron player, because they still laugh at my short game. But anyway, Robert used to say, playing foursomes with me, that if he didn't hit the green with his second shot, he'd have to chip again. So he said I did encourage him to play very good golf with his irons. But anyway, we did become firm friends, and he this is a quite a long anecdote, but he, in going to the 1967 West of Ireland with two of his fellow club members, Michael and Tony Black, and me,
I believe he was feeling particularly confident.
Well, it was a 2 handicap from Fort William, which didn't mean a lot to anybody. And he just told us on the way there that he was playing very well. So we went to Dominic was his name. He was the steward in Ross's Point, and he ran a book always. So the three of us backed Robert at 66-1. In those days, it was pre-decimalisation, 6 and 8 pence each we produced to get 10 shillings each way on them at 66-1. So, and he put a pound on himself at that as well. So the story of him winning that West is a long one, but the key match was he beat Joe Carr in the third round in the worst conditions, and you could possibly imagine Ross's Point. On the third green, it was blowing a gale. There were left to right putts, and Joe was about 8 feet left to right down the hill, where there was no way he's going to stop the ball. And Robert was about a foot inside him. And Joe suggested to Robert there was casual water between his ball and the hole, so he took it down below the hole to give himself a right to left putt up the hill into the wind. And Joe did that and missed it. And Robert had the presence of mind to say to Joe, I've got casual water as well, because he had the same horrible left to right putt downhill, and Robert took his below the hole and held it. And Joe Carr wrote to Robert after that round and said he beat him 2-1. Robert was around 73, I think, in that weather. And Joe's letter basically said this was one of the finest rounds of golf anybody's ever played against me.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. But those of us who had him backed at 66-1 were the only 3 people out watching in this extraordinary Ross's Point day, which of course people still get. And then he was 4 up and 7 to play in the final against Arnie O'Connor. He did tend to hit it sometimes left and right rather than down the middle, but he started blasting it off to the right and lost some quick holes. And he was a hometown favourite. So there were about 2,000 people watching the game, as though it's only well over 1,000, of whom only 3 was supporting Robert. 3.
And of course, back then, we're talking about an era of Irish golf where the amateur game was king, really.
Yeah, it was. And the start of a really, really good time for Irish amateur golf. And Robert went on to win 3 other championships. He won another West, where I did caddy for him in that one. And he won the North and the Close. But that leaded on then to Arthur. We touched on Arthur played more times for Ireland than Robert did, I'd say. Robert was just he was a bit wild. His strength was his short game, really.
Honourable mentions to Suzanne Flanagan, Ian Elliott, Dougie Heather, Hugh McKeown, and the Fleury brothers. Does anything jump out from an anecdote perspective about any of those particular golfers?
Actually, I'd like to go back and mention Jeremy Pilch, because I know Jeremy Pilch came between Ian Bamford and us. Actually, my first year in college was Jeremy's last. He was a terrific guy, really. He is a terrific guy. I still know him. His aunt, Pam Barton, was a very renowned Curtis Cup player, English international. And his mother, Patricia Mervyn, was her name. And Jeremy, I think a lot of people wanted him to play for Ireland because he really loved it over here, and he played in all the Scratch Cups. He got very friendly with people like Joe Carr. There's a famous story of him actually also the west of Ireland, where Jeremy got to the quarterfinals. And the quarterfinal of the West of Ireland was typically played on the Easter Monday afternoon. And Jeremy was all set for tee off in his quarterfinal at 2:30 or whatever it was. And he was out practicing. Rex Buck, who was then secretary of County Sligo, who became secretary of Portmarnock subsequently. But Rex Buck was told to go and approach Jeremy and say that his match had been put back by 45 minutes. And the only reason was because Joe Carr wanted to watch the Irish Grand National. So here you have a young student, sort of facing Joe Carr in his pomp and being told he has to wait for 45 minutes. Needless to say, Joe beat him. But actually, Jeremy got to the semi-finals, the next year when Vincent Nevin, but he was a great player and a great guy. And so we mustn't leave him out.
I think you were also keen to share an anecdote about Sir Peter Froggatt.
Yeah, well, that's going back to Ian Bamford's time, of course. Sir Peter I never met him, sadly, but he became a very prominent surgeon, knighted for services to medicine, and also Vice Chancellor of Queen's, as it turned out. But he was apparently somewhat scruffy, as I understand it, when he was a student. He didn't exactly have a great wardrobe, but he did have one of his tutors was a member here in Portmarnock called Tom O'Neill, Corkman. I won't attempt the Cork accent, but he did ask him one day about Froggatt, said, "Do you play golf?" And Peter Froggatt, in his strong northern accent, said, "Aye, sir, I do." And he said, "Well," he said, "I'll bring you to Portmarnock." But of course, he had an old canvas bag with holes in it. He barely had a decent pair of trousers to wear. He looked really scruffy. And O'Neill started giving a little bit of advice about how to behave at Portmarnock and almost started trying to tell him how to play. And Froggatt started with 5 straight 4s. And O'Neill looked at him and said, "Have you played this game before, Froggatt?" And Froggatt said, "Aye, sir." "What do you play off?" "I play off scratch." "Well, F you, Froggatt." So Froggatt was, and he was a contemporary of Ian Bamford. So, And anyway, you mentioned Ian Elliott. Ian was a direct contemporary of mine with Robert Pollan. That's why we had such great fun, really, with really good golfers. Ian went on to win 2 championships, West of Ireland and North of Ireland. And he obviously became an international. And actually, interestingly, for a Presbyterian from Delgany, he was appointed to be a special advisor to the Catholic Church, to the bishops. Wow. And sadly, I mean, Ian is still around. We persuaded him to play in a Doug's match about 20 years ago, but I don't think I've seen him since then. And Dougie Heather then, very, very prominent Sutton golfer, capped when he was, I think, 19. Sorry, Hugh McKeown older than us, and certainly Hugh was more the Jeremy Pilch era, and Hugh still plays at Portmarnock today and well into his 80s, and Hugh was a Munster man, and he was captain in 1973 and played a lot of seniors golf. So it was a very, very prosperous year for golfers in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And still is. We'll talk about the next generation.
Gavin, as we start to wind down the chat, I thought it might be interesting for you to tell us a little bit about the comprehensive schedule of annual matches, member meetings and tours that the Society undertakes.
Well, by the way, and I must not leave out Suzanne Flanagan, Susie Flanagan, a member of the very prominent Flanagan family. Obviously, her brother Jody played Walker Cup, and Susie played Curtis Cup, but she was certainly one of the most prominent women golfers of her time around about the 1990s, so certainly can't leave her out. I mean, societies are all about playing matches, and I referred to how the society established tours in the early 1900s, 1930, 1949, and so forth. And I guess when I really took an interest in the Dougs when I came back here in 1974, was that we should be playing these matches. And as it was, there were a couple of fixtures against Carrickmines or Foxrock, but other than the society, really nothing was happening. So I was working in Edinburgh, and the captain of the Suggs was a partner in the firm I was working. So I, with some trepidation, asked about a match. And 8 of us went to Muirfield in 1977. Now, getting 8 to go to Muirfield then was pretty hard going. And it's fair to say some of them were not the most prominent golfers, but they was definitely interested in going to the rugby match. But we lost 8-0 anyway to the Suggs in Muirfield. And I came back with my tail between my legs and felt that this had been a failed exercise. But I plucked up courage. They didn't come back here, obviously, in 78. We didn't try again until 81. So I plucked up courage and asked again in 81. And this time I brought Arthur Pearce and a couple of others. So I think probably Dougie Heather was on that team as well. And we lost 6.5, 5.5. But there were a couple of... and the Suggs were very strong. And a couple of them said... maybe there is something here. And they did come back in 82. And we beat them. And that fixture has been played, apart from COVID, every single year. And will be the 50th anniversary of that first match next year. So that was very exciting. And it has been a fixture which has created many, many friendships between Doug's stretching back to my time, right up to the present day. Following on from that, the London University Golfing Society, John Conway, who's a good colleague of mine, current president of the Dougs, established that fixture, and that's been going since 1991. Meanwhile, the Portmarnock fixture got going with the gift of the Mun putter, which I referred to earlier, and that's been going strongly as well. And also, matches against Queens were a bit hit and miss for a while. We had established a clique, by the way, against UCD in 1976, which is still going strong. And then the idea of the Ledger, which was a three-way triangular fixture between Queen's and UCD and Trinity was established in 1986. And so that's going to have its 40th anniversary this year, played every year. And so it went on. And we then were all the time broadening the membership of the society. Some might have felt, certainly around my time, that the rugby players and the cricketers and the boat club people felt that the golf society was very much for the undergraduate golfers, but it's not. Actually, it's for anybody who went to the university. And whilst I didn't persuade many of the rugby mates of my time to join, latterly we've had a lot more alumni who played other sports, who've taken up golf in later life. And so the breadth of the society has been terrific, and we have now more people to pick from. So matches like the Malone Pirates. I should have mentioned, we haven't actually mentioned the match against Royal County Down, which was established in 1957 by Cyril Masco. His son, Philip, who was a contemporary of mine, was president of the Dugs a few years ago. And Cyril and his great pal, Frank McKeever, started the fixture against Royal County Down. And I think I'm right in saying it's the longest surviving continuous fixture that Royal County Down has.
Wow.
And it will be played again this year. So it's a very prominent fixture as well. And then I made reference to society golf really took off after the First World War in England and Scotland and Wales. And you had a myriad of societies starting up. You had the Moles in southeast of England. You had the Erratics in Wales. You have the Leather Jackets in southwest of England, and the Hittites in Lancashire and Cheshire, and the Pirates in Edinburgh, and the 32 Club in the west coast of Scotland. So these are all really prominent societies, which a lot of them now coming to their centenary year or just past it. And we just felt, why don't we play them? And we've increasingly established relationships. We've been playing the Hittites since 2002 and the Leather Jackets since 2006. And now, more recently, the Moles. And there's quite a few current young Dugs based in London. Okay. And they've established good friendships with members of the Moles. And so we've now got a whole fixture list, I think, there's, including Captain's Prizes and President's Prizes, there's something like 15 or more fixtures a year in the society. So it's absolutely thriving. Membership is growing. But it wouldn't have happened, say, without the history we've just related.
Yeah. So what do you think's next for the Dublin University Golf?
More of the same, I hope. I mean, the challenge is to get our slots at some of the top courses. One of the attractions is we've been able to play our matches at Portmarnock. Portmarnock have been incredibly supportive of the Dugs. And if you play some of these other societies I referred to, Hittites, you typically play at Hoylake and Birkdale. The Moles, you play at Royal St. George's. So the future of these societies in large part depends on having access to some of the great links courses. And they have been incredibly supportive of us, as Portmarnock has. And you then want to ensure that you get a continuing train of good undergraduates who can be encouraged to join and play. One of the great pleasures of my involvement in the last 25 years or so is to get those graduates to come in their 20s and play in these matches, which can be a struggle for them. They've got to find the time, they've got to find the funds. But there are some people now in their 40s and 50s who just love it. And so we will be continuing to encourage the current DUGC players to join. One of them, actually, Owen O'Sullivan, who's been the top player the last couple of years, won the Boyd Quake. So we're still achieving at that undergraduate level. But the society is part dependent on that constant link to the undergraduates, but also, as I just mentioned, a much broader church now with so many others joining.
We might just take a look at legacy. And obviously, we mentioned earlier on that the golfers of the Oxford and Cambridge Golf Society exerted significant influence in the growth of the game of golf throughout the UK and further afield. You've been associated with golf at Trinity for more than 60 years. With organised golf existing there since 1894, how would you assess the impact that Trinity golfers have had on the Irish golf landscape?
Goodness, that's I'm not. I think, and it's a good thing. I mean, the breadth of the game here is not, dare I say, as a result of those who were fortunate enough to go to, dare I call it, elite type of institutions like Trinity or UCD or others, because it's become a very, very widely played game. And I always put the success of Ireland's golf down, ultimately in our, what have we had, 11 major championships from 5 people in the space of 20 years. So that's extraordinary by any international comparison. And I don't put it down to the elite institutions where people played. I put it down to the breadth of the game and things like pitch and putt around the country back in the 40s and 50s, and a number of times Shane Lowry refers to that. So I don't think that Trinity Golf has had any particular cachet in relation to Irish golf in the last 50 years. Certainly not relative to what people like Harrington and McGinley and Lowry have done. But we did have a major input into the structure of the game 100 years ago. And clubs like Royal Dublin and Portmarnock particularly been very much part of our life and our society's life, and I think that long may that continue.
Well, regular listeners will know that I conclude most episodes with the same recurring questions. The first of these questions, Gavin, focuses on your own bucket list courses. So you might let us know what your 5 bucket list courses are and why you've chosen them.
Goodness. Well, I will always say and answer that question, and probably because you can't play it every day, and how many people say this, and you wonder then why they say, but the old course at St Andrews is just so special. And I was lucky to play it in the Boyd Quake back in 1967. And I'm lucky to play it on an annual basis, and it's got to be the bucket list, really. No, I never played in reverse, and that's quite a hard thing to do. It only happens, I think, is it once a year or twice a year? But I haven't. Portmarnock, and then you have the debate about Portmarnock, Portrush, and Royal County Down. I've been lucky to be a member of all of them. Not Portrush latterly, but Portmarnock has just been so good to me, but it is such a great golf course. And even when I could play a bit, I still regarded, of the 3 of them, Portmarnock was the strongest of the 3. And it's not just me who says that. Some of our top players say that. Portrush is now arguably been strengthened. Now it's an open course. And of course, it's pretty high on my bucket list as well. So there's now, if I'm allowed all 3, it's very hard to leave one of those 3 out.
You have 5 total, but I mean, it's a rough 5, Gavin. It's a rough 5. So riff away to your heart's
You got to go back to Scotland then, and Prestwick is way up on my list as a club as much as a course. Again, part of my Trinity background. We got a match there in 1968, day after my 21st birthday, 36 holes at Prestwick, which I'll never forget. And I'm lucky enough to be a member there and play there regularly, and I just love it to bits.
And did you get to play it when they reinstated the original layout?
No, I missed it, but they're doing it again this year. It's the 175th anniversary, and they're reinstating the 12, so I certainly planned to play it then. And then you've got to go further afield. I've been lucky to play some of the top courses in America, Augusta. I mean, Augusta's a very special experience, and I really, every time I've been there, I've loved it. Just love playing the shots of the holes, so well, and it's just a wonderful golf course.
And I believe you were recently on a Southern Hemisphere adventure, New Zealand. I believe Mr. Price was telling me.
Well, I was in New Zealand. It was an RNA event. I played Royal Auckland, Royal Wellington, and they first time I'd been there, obviously. So they're but actually both redesigned. So I don't know what they were like previously, but they're both been completely upgraded, which of course so many courses are doing. And I've been like Doug's. Sorry, I should have mentioned the other point that Doug's more latterly. We did have a terrific tour in 2009 in the northeast of the US, and we played a lot of those top courses around New England, which was very special. John Conway led that tour as our captain then. And more recently, we've toured South Africa, where we've had a couple of tours on really top-class courses like Durban Country Club and Leopard Creek and the River Club. Anyway, I moved away from the top.
Beg your pardon, sorry, I waylaid you.
But certainly, Augusta Cypress Point, I've only played once. I'd love to play it again. It's probably one that we all saw it in the Walker Cup, or if you were watching the Walker Cup last year, you saw pictures of it. It's just remind me what a special place it is.
Sublime. The coastal holes and even the inland holes. I mean, it's just a fantastic golfing terrain.
Pine Valley's nearly always rated the world number one. Just too tough for me now, I'm afraid. But it's just an amazing golf course, maybe amazing experience.
Listen, before I ask you the final question, you might let listeners know how they might go about purchasing a copy of College Courses and Lasting Links.
Speak to our honorary secretary, Mark Manan.
I actually have the answer. I spoke to Mark, so he has told me that he will be available to take orders via email. And anybody that's interested in purchasing a copy of College Courses and Lasting Links should contact him via email. I will put the email address in the show notes for the episode. So our final question today, Gavin, seeks to understand what two golf book recommendations you would proffer to listeners looking to augment their golfing libraries.
Ooh, right. Well, Bernard Darwin's right up there. They probably nearly both be Darwin books. You're going to ask me for the names of ones I particularly recommend, but there's one particular one, Golf Between the Wars. And also I've referred to Darwin 2 or 3 times. He obviously was much more enamored in being a golf journalist than he was of being a barrister. But he writes prolifically about all his experiences on a lot of the courses we've just been talking about. And so I also have his autobiography. So Darwin's right up there at the top of the list. Excuse me. I would, as a record on one of the a history of golf club histories are. It's a lot easier to write a history of a society than a club, because you don't have this is not a course to write about, and not a clubhouse. But I still think Brendan Cashell's latest book about Portmarnock is an extraordinary record. It's not a read as such, but it's a factual chronology. So in terms of its layout and everything else, and I was lucky enough to do a bit of proofreading for Brendan when he wrote that, but I think it's a fantastic story. And so there, I need to go back and look at them. And I've got more. I could talk about cricket books as well, but I've got, but I do. I did get another. I got a lovely gift from Noel Fox of Everard's book about the Royal and Ancient, which is obviously well out of print now. It was written in the 19th century, and Noel Fox gave me a gift of that, Noel Fox Sr., and I need to get the full title of it, and I may have even got the author wrong. But
Well, Gavin Caldwell, it's been my absolute pleasure to host you on this episode of the Firm and Fast Golf podcast. Many thanks for your time and your expertise in leading us through the history of the Dublin University Golf Society.
okay, thank you very much, Shane. So I missed out. I'll get lots of messages about all the people.
Well, look, the moral of that story is go and buy the book, and you know the rest of the story. Thanks, Gavin. Many thanks for tuning in. If you don't currently follow us on socials, you can do so as follows. On X, you can find us at Firm and Fast Golf. On Instagram, Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On Blue Sky, if you're that way inclined, the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. On YouTube at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast, and indeed finally on Substack at the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast occasional newsletter. We favour to ask, if you're still with us, if you're enjoying the show, you might consider giving us a star rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really would be appreciated. Thanks again for listening.